Hi, I'm Saurav Chaudhary, founder of CSG Advisory, a go-to-market consulting company. Welcome to the inaugural episode of Be Beta, Be Unbeatable, a podcast series that brings together go-to-market practitioners from the B2B world and shares their journey to achieve commercial excellence. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by a dear friend and an IT industry veteran, Michael Costigan from Sydney, Australia. Michael brings in a diverse experience and has been in leadership roles within the IT distribution ecosystem and has also served in various OEM advisory boards. Welcome, Michael. Great to have you with us for the very first episode of what is going to be a monthly endeavor.
Thanks, Saurav, and thanks to the CSG team for bringing me onto this podcast, and I look forward to a great discussion.
I'm equally excited and look forward to this conversation. Let's get started by unpacking your professional journey for our audience.
Of course. So basically, my professional journey as it pertains to IT and the IT channel, I have over 20 years experience of working in the IT channel, and it basically came about, Saurav and team, quite by accident. Back in the late 90s, I was working in the US, and I was working for a market research firm, a company called Kenny & Associates with Right Brain Market Research, and I was studying my executive MBA at the University of Memphis at the Fogelman College of Business. And as I was finishing my MBA, Y2K had started, and anybody who could spell IT was being offered a job in IT. And so to that end, I was coming from the US back to Sydney. I got a job as a marketing manager for an ISV, and I was doing a lot of work with one of the major technology organisations, IBM, and that was where my career was headed. With the team at IBM, they were setting up a distribution business with a company called Avnet, and I was asked to go out and help drive the marketing function for the Avnet IBM business. I didn't know what a distribution organisation was. I didn't know what a channel was. But fast forward 20 years later, and I had been immersed in the IT channel, not only in Australia and New Zealand with Avnet. I was fortunate enough to grow my career with Avnet, and then later Tech Data, as they were acquired by Avnet, was acquired by Tech Data. I was lucky enough to work all around the Asia-Pacific region, leading the marketing function, the vendor function, and then the education function around the Asia-Pacific region. But more importantly, I got to spend time in Asia. I lived in India for 6 months in Mumbai, which was a fantastic experience. Not only was I able to impart some of my knowledge on our team in India, but I learnt a lot about doing business in India. I learnt a lot about culture. Indian culture, which was fantastic. And I also learned a lot as I moved around the ASEAN region and Hong Kong and China as well. So 20 plus years in the channel, specifically around IT distribution with multinational corporations. And it's been a fantastic journey, Saurav.
Thanks, Michael, for sharing the road travel. At the back of this enriching journey, how do you see the IT landscape evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
Great question, Saurav. And if you'd asked me this question 18 months ago, it would have been I would have given you a pretty stock standard type of answer, and that answer would have been along the lines of moving from second platform technology to the third platform technology or next generation technologies. And would have been a bit of a stock standard answer, and would have spoken a lot about cloud and on-premise and off-premise and security and cybersecurity, et cetera, et cetera. But the one thing, and I'm sure all our listeners have experienced in the last 18 months, was the whole COVID pandemic and how that has impacted not only our working lives and the way in which we work, but also our personal lives as well, and the downstream effects that has had on ourselves, on our relationships with our families, on our professional relationships. And as I mentioned before, the way in which we work. And we've seen such a significant shift, from working habits. We've seen a shift on, wellness and the mental well-being of people working in organisations being dislocated or alienated from the physical office to the virtual home office and some of the stresses and things that have resulted in that. So the question is timely. As I said, if you asked me 18 months ago, it would have been a very simple type of answer. But the world we live in today is very dynamic. The COVID pandemic is real. It's changing. It's evolving. The way IT, and in particular the IT channel, has responded to that has been very encouraging. There's a lot of opportunity out there. I mean, IT has suddenly become, front and centre in a lot of organisations' strategic, pillars. You ask anybody today in any organisation, and they'll say with a bit of a grin that they're probably sick of Zoom meetings or WebEx meetings or things like that. But at the same time, the use of technology around that has enabled corporations to continue during the pandemic. The use of IT platforms, the use of cloud applications has helped organisations transfer their business to an online model. Shopping online, ordering your groceries and things like that, and vital services online has really taken off during the pandemic. And we've seen a lot of these services become mission critical for organisations. And for the IT channel and for the business partners and vendors, that represents a material opportunity to drive and escalate their business.
It's interesting to hear about the secular trends. Technology adoption has certainly taken a quantum leap, both at the individual and organization level during this period, which translates to increased opportunities for the IT players. Going back to your time in distribution, you would have engaged with a multitude of vendors and their partner programs. It all looks the same from the outside, with every vendor offering rebates, market development funds, and many other undifferentiated resources. How did you operate through this complexity, and how, in your opinion, should vendors create differentiation?
Yep. Yeah, very, very good question, Surav. And once again, in light of how things have changed over the last 18 months, it's a very poignant question. I'll go back in a bit of history for you to start the answer about partner programs. One of my very first interactions when I joined Avnet as the marketing manager for Australia and New Zealand, one of my very first interactions was working with a locally owned and operated partner, Australian business partner. They were an SI partner, and they were headquartered in Queensland. They had 20 people working there, and they were predominantly an IBM business partner, if you will. They were a very sales-orientated systems integration organisation. And I went up there to meet with the three principals who own the organisation, and basically I went up there to talk about programs from an IBM perspective, if you will, and how they should be doing more programs, more marketing campaigns, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the poignant things the owner said to me was, he said, "Michael, look, we appreciate you coming up. We appreciate your time. We appreciate all of these programs, but what you can do for us, what you can really do for us to add value to our organisation is to give you back some time." And this gentleman then went on to talk about, you had 15 salespeople. They basically had, in a 40-hour week, they had between 10 and 15 hours a week to actually go and sell to their existing customers and to go and sell to net new customers, if you took out administration and meetings and things like that. And they wanted an IT distribution partner and a vendor to work with them to simplify their programs, to make it easier for them to drive marketing activity, to give them time back to go out and actually sell and drive leads and drive profitability for their organisation. Now, fast forward 20 years, and things have not really changed that much. Business partners still need to run the day-to-day operations of their organisation. They still need to work with cutting-edge vendors who are driving acceleration and growth in the market, but they need to have a lot of what I would call white noise. They need to have that taken away from them. They need partner programs that drive profitability, that are simple to deploy and engage with. Okay, they don't need to climb over hurdles. They don't need to read, a big binder full of notes and contracts to engage in a program. They need things to be simple. They need things to be commercial, and they need things to work, pretty much the first time. That's the way that the vendors really win with the channel. When they provide the thought leadership, they provide the technology, and then they provide the the means to getting to the customer through marketing and sales engagement and keeping it simple. That's what drives partner loyalty to the vendors, right? Making it simple, making it worthwhile, but making it achievable as well. So they're in my experience, some of the key things that vendors can do to endanger themselves to the business partner community to drive, greater loyalty. At the same time, the business partner wants to be acknowledged and respected for their loyalty and for what they've achieved with the vendor. They don't want vendors opening up partner programs to everybody. They want to be rewarded for their loyalty. They want to be rewarded for the sales that they've driven over a number of years. So they want to see the bar set very high from a vendor when they're opening up programs to potential net new partners as well.
Absolutely love what you said about taking some of the white noise away and keeping it simple. Research has shown that B2B sellers typically spend 2/3 of their time in non-sales activities. So it becomes imperative for partner programs to help drive sales velocity and partner profitability. When we bring together loyalty and profitability, it is like walking a tightrope in today's dynamic ID channel landscape with fierce competition for market share. How does one strike a balance between these two dimensions when it pertains to vendor-partner relationships operating in this complex environment?
Yeah, look, once again, another good question, and it is an ever evolving dynamic. And when I was working at Avnet and then later Tech Data, we used to often refer to this as the hearts and minds discussion. And especially when we moved from the second technology platform to the third technology platform, you had traditional vendors who had a server and storage and software business, if you will, and they had worked with their traditional partner base and they had their tried and true partners, and those partners knew what they were doing, they knew what the vendor was doing. There wasn't a lot of technological change. There was upgrades and updates within that server storage software categories, but it was a pretty steady as she goes approach. The partners, knew which vendors that they were selling. They knew which accounts that they were selling into. Then the world started to shift, with the rise of the third platform or next generation technologies, and in particular a cloud. And you really saw, from our perspective, sitting in the middle as an IT distributor, we saw a lot of different dynamics at play. Traditional systems integration partners were suddenly under threat from the vendor. The vendor should utilise their channel to go to market, but with the next generation technology, and in particular cloud, some of the sales motions became direct rather than through the channel. The partner types change from your traditional systems integration partner to a more, born in the cloud type of partner. So, we saw, and it was that period. It was the mid-teens to the late teens. We saw a lot of change in the way technology was bought and the way technology was sold. We saw a lot of change in the vendor product offerings and solutions. And we saw a lot of change in the partner types. Okay, customers had a lot of choice. They went from buying exorbitant amounts of putting out exorbitant amounts of money to buy a certain system or upgrade a system to a pay-as-you-go type of model as well, and that had a lot of ramifications for partners who had their businesses predicated on what I would call the second platform profitability matrices. So, a lot of change and a lot of shift happened in that 2 to 3 year period. Some partner organisations, sadly, were unable to make that shift. They were not able to innovate. They were not able to transform, and some of those organisations ceased doing business. Some transformed themselves very well, and they were able to catch the wave. As I said, you're born in the cloud partners. New partner organisations came up overnight, and they were able to capture share. The vendors themselves, were able to harness the power of the third platform or next generation technologies, and then once again from a direct model, then they were able to push to a more partner partner-centric model. You had some loyalties being tested in this new paradigm as well. You had partners who traditionally worked with vendor A suddenly saw themselves working with vendor B or vendor C. And that caused a lot of angst in relationships and in personal relationships that partner organisations had with their vendor counterparts. So we saw a lot of shift in that as well. And the last thing I'll mention, Surav, is the role of the IT distribution organisation. So typically, it was the vendor sells direct to the high enterprise, the tier one partners buy off the vendor for the mid enterprise. And then, the IT distributor worked as the vendor, represented the vendor in the low enterprise to the mid-market kind of space. A lot of these models just lent themselves to either direct from the vendor or the vendor direct with the partner. And IT distribution there was a threat there that the IT distributors could be cut out of that whole market. But then once again, in this business, IT distribution went through that transformation or that reinvention, if you will, and moving from a value-added distribution organisation to a more of an orchestrator. So coming up with cloud marketplaces where, distributors designed their own cloud marketplaces, went out and got the vendors to port into those marketplaces so they could build those solutions for then the partner to go and offer to their end user customers. One of the things that I will always marvel at in the IT channel is the resilience and the innovation, whether it be from the vendors or from the business partners or the IT distribution organisations. It continues to evolve, but also it continues to astound me at the rate of change, and the innovation that goes on is truly wonderful, and it is a fantastic thing to behold.
If I understand correctly, your advice is to be open and agile to the changes, innovate around the business models to stay relevant with the pace of change, and create new value pools. Let me shift to another critical lever of growth, marketing. Partners usually expect the OEMs to do the heavy lifting when it comes to marketing. Is this sustainable in a world where buying has become much more complex with multiple channels and choices available?
Yeah, look, as part of that transformation or evolution, if you will, around next generation technologies, so digital and data, okay? I call them the two Ds, have been very transformational in terms of the IT channel. So a lot of the more nimble partners or agile partners, if you will, realize that the digital and having a digital presence and having digital marketing is not that hard. They just had to pivot a bit more, and a lot of them embrace that and have taken that on. Once again, when I was working in IT distribution, we worked with our partners to help set up digital marketing hubs or agencies within partner organisations, and it was a leverage model that the partners could actually go out and deploy campaigns, digital campaigns, very in a timely manner, in a seamless way to their customer base and also to their prospects as well. And they could incorporate that with vendor marketing messages, with vendor programs and things like that. They could do it a lot quicker and a lot cheaper. That the cost was coming down as well. They could drive that as well. The second D, Surav, was around data. Okay, so we've heard everything about big data and analytics, but partners, the more savvy partners were starting to use some of their campaign data, okay, and starting to take that data and reuse that data in terms of getting specifically targeted with some of their campaign messages, and working with us in the distribution space and also with the vendors as well. So, I call it the rise of the two Ds, so the digital marketing and then what I call the data marketing as well. So partner organisations are becoming a lot more savvy and a lot more immersed in digital and data as well. And that's a trend which I'm seeing a lot more of, especially here as I sit here in Sydney. A lot of the business partners in Australia and New Zealand are really driving that.
I quite like your 2D approach of digital and data in thinking about marketing. Along the same lines, I prefer to define modern marketing as a combination of math, magic, and machine to help curate experiences that drives preference.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
From what you shared today, it is evident that you had an enriching and successful career in the IT channel ecosystem. What advice do you have for the young talent joining the workforce?
A very timely question. I'm going to answer that in two parts. I'm going to be biased with my first answer, and I think for those people that are either graduates or they're new to the IT space, I would encourage you to go and work in an IT distribution organisation. Okay, one of the great things that I experienced when I worked when I started working for Avnet is that I was exposed to many different vendors, many different sales motions, many different marketing motions. You basically got to see how some of the world's leading vendors went to market with some of their great technology. So that was just a great buzz to go to work and to work with those vendor organisations. It was like a dream come true, and you couldn't get enough of it. You were literally like the kid in the candy store. The other aspect of working in distribution was working with the business partners and getting that commercial grounding or the commercial reality. Okay, not being removed from what's happening, but understanding that some partner organisations are small, they're nimble. The partner principals may be mortgaging their home to run and drive that organisation. So it really is mission critical that they succeed and you help them to succeed. So understanding, how mission critical and timely it is to make things happen. That what you do is not doing things in a vacuum. That what we do in the channel matters. Okay, so that sense of urgency helps as well. And there are some great. There's some great technologists. There are some great marketing and sales people in the channel. There are some fantastic entrepreneurial people in the channel. I cannot speak highly enough of the entrepreneurial spirit that I have seen in the channel, whether it be in Australia and New Zealand, whether it be in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, or Vietnam, where I've spent time. In Hong Kong, spent a lot of time in Hong Kong and mainland China. India, where I lived in Mumbai for 6 months, the entrepreneurial leadership in India and technology leadership is absolutely phenomenal. So if you're new to this industry, if you're a graduate, I would strongly encourage you to go and work with an IT distribution organisation so you get that well-rounded experience. The other thing which I think, and I would encourage that the younger people or people, once again, people new to this industry, is you not only pick the right company, but you pick the right leader. Okay, now more than ever, leadership is mission critical to an organisation, but it's mission critical to your career development and your career aspirations. So when you're in an interview, if you're interviewing with your potential leader, make sure you do some research on that person. Make sure you ask the right questions about their leadership and what they've done, and get some referrals on that, because leadership in this new era is going to be mission critical. And I was fortunate once again at Avnet and Tech Data. I had two great leaders when I worked in region, KP Tang and William Chu, two fantastic leaders who gave me life lessons, which once again I'll keep with me for life, obviously, but allowed me to flourish and were great mentors as well. And I will be forever grateful for that.
That's an excellent piece of advice to eager young minds. People keen to build a career in IT sales and marketing should plan for a stint with IT distribution to build a solid commercial foundation. Additionally, they should pursue working with progressive leaders who are invested in the long term. Thanks, Michael, for joining us and sharing your life lessons. You have operated in multiple roles across multiple countries and kept learning through your entire professional journey. Your story is a true hallmark of being in that state of constant beta, or as I like to say, the constant state of experimentation as you navigated the world of business.
Surya, thank you, and thank you to the team at CSG. My sincere pleasure.
Thanks to our listeners for joining us. If you like what you have heard, subscribe to our show on Apple Podcast or Spotify, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you and wish you a great 2022, and see you in our next episode.